Shipping our car across the world cost us way more than we thought it would. Between broken mishaps and hidden insurance costs, it cost us more than 4 times our original quote. So this is the story of how we got our car from Hobart, Australia to Vancouver, Canada. And we're going to tell you everything so you don't make the same mistakes that we made. And there's going to be a few handy hints along the way.
Hello, welcome back to our channel. I'm Lil and this is Jake.
Hello, I'm Jake. We've been getting a lot of comments and messages about how we got our Land Cruiser from Australia, from Tasmania in Australia, to Canada. We're gonna talk about it all today. We're gonna talk about how we did it, the legalities, how much it cost, all the ups and downs that we had while we were trying to figure out if it was even possible.
We had to work out what the import rules were. We had to work out how we were going to manage to drive on the wrong side of the road in the wrong side vehicle.
Yeah, there were so many things. So in this video, we're gonna cover how we got our car here. We're also gonna give you guys a few tips on how you guys can get your vehicle over here from Australia to Canada. I'm not gonna say that we're professionals at it, but we've done it before. So we'd like to give as much advice to people as we wish that we had before we embarked on this journey.
So you don't make the same mistakes we did.
Yeah, exactly
and
right.
You don't leave thinking that it's going to cost $5,000 to get from one side of the world to the other, because
It definitely doesn't, no. And that's, I guess, where we start into this.
So the first question that a lot of people have been asking is why the hell we didn't buy a car overseas and why we went to all of this effort to send our car overseas.
Yeah, and it's a long story. Basically, I used to scroll Facebook Marketplace in USA all the time looking at how cheap Ford F-150s were. And our original plan was to fly over here and buy one. And look, that is definitely the sensible option. But it wasn't until I came across a few Land Cruisers for sale, in particular 70 series, which were never brought into North America. And they were going for an incredibly high price. And I thought, what if we brought one with us? So I contacted a broker and got a quote to get our car shipped from Melbourne to the port of LA, Ro-Ro, which we'll get into later, what that means. And it was about $5,000. And that's pretty much where our whole...
So from that point, we were like, $5,000, we can do that. Like, that is a piece of piss.
Yes.
And so we pretty much were like, okay, we're set on this. Like,
let's do this. Spoiler alert, it cost a lot more than $5,000, but we'll get into how much it cost later on. So pretty much at that point, we didn't have the car. So we went and bought a car, spent about 9 months turning it from what it was into what it is now. That was a huge
And what
journey.
it was a completely empty shell into something that is now completely capable of living off grid for infinite amount of time.
And so that's what sort of started our journey of why we shipped our car here. And when we figured out how much it would cost, eventually we were already way too deep to even go back. So we're stuck here now.
So the next big decision we had to make was whether we were going to send our car Ro-Ro, which is roll on, roll off, which means you just put the car on a boat, they drive it on, they drive it off, you pick it up from the port. However, that comes with a few issues. First issue being that you can't have anything in the car at all.
Yes.
The second issue it comes with is that it can be pretty unsafe and people can lose items in their car. They can lose batteries. They can have issues with, wheels or scratches or dents and bangs and all of this stuff.
A lot of times it won't go directly from port to port. For example, ours may have gone from Melbourne to Japan, for example, anywhere really, and then they get driven off the boat, sat in a yard somewhere, and then driven back onto a boat. All those times they're left unlocked with the keys in them. Anyone can access them. People lose their head units, they lose their spare tires. I've seen a lot of people, for example, with troopies, they will board up the back and lock everything around the back and then just have only the cabin open. But it's just super risky. And for this car, and we put our heart and soul into it, it just wasn't right.
But I spoke to one person who has done it.
And they said it was great.
They've had small issues, but I think they've been lucky. So you're rolling the dice with that one. So we just thought, hey, let's spend the extra $1,000, $2,000 and just put it in a container.
And so the thing is as well with a container, you could put anything you want in that container. You could slide things up the side if you could fit it in. That's your container. You could put motorbikes, anything in it, really. Okay, so another question that we got from a lot of people is why we chose to ship our car to Vancouver.
And not either LA or I think you can send it
Seattle?
to Seattle as well. So we chose to send our car to Vancouver purely for the reason that we have a really good relationship, Australia, meaning we have a really good relationship with Canada. We're both Commonwealth countries and it makes it a lot easier for us to get visas. We just felt like we had heard a lot less trouble being had in Vancouver with shipping vehicles than we'd heard with people sending vehicles to LA, for example. LA is one of the most hectic ports in the world. They receive so many items every single day. It is all automated. Actually, after we sent our car, we realized that some other people who we'd followed on Instagram had sent their car on the same shipping container boat as what we had. They were actually sending theirs to LA. So the boat went Australia, Vancouver, and then down to LA. Our car arrived in Vancouver on the ship that their car was also on, and we picked it up roughly a month ago today. Boat then took an additional 3 days to get to California. They picked their car up about 4 days ago. So they have had their car 3.5 weeks less than we have had our cars. I don't know if we just got lucky, if they just got really unlucky, but I can tell you now I'm really grateful that we sent it to Vancouver.
Yes, I'd heard a lot of horror stories about LA and that's why we changed. A lot of people told me to send to Seattle, which is further north obviously. And I realized that Seattle is pretty much just as far as Vancouver. So I think the quotes to go to Seattle and Vancouver were very, very similar. I also want to touch on the fact that when you ship a vehicle in a container, for example, and it gets to the port, certain ports will give you, 2 to 3 days grace period of free storage. And then after that, you have to pay. The problem with it getting left at a port for a month at a time, you have to pay sometimes like $100 to $200 per day that your container sits for storage. So you want to send your car to a port where you know it's going to get through quick, so that you don't have any of these extra charges of the car sitting there. And we will touch on that later about flying to and from countries and why it's a better idea to book flights later and stuff, but we'll get onto that. Probably one of the first things that you need to do is if you can get a visa to go there. Because if you can't get a visa to get to that country, then what's even the point of shipping your car there?
So before we started sending our car at all, we went through a huge 6 to 8 month process of trying to get extended visas to travel through the US. However, that wasn't as simple of a process as you may think it might be.
No.
We obviously live in Tasmania. They only run the interviews to get these visas in Melbourne, Sydney, or Perth. We had to book in for one of these appointments, and these appointments can be very hard to come by. So we originally tried to book in for our appointment back in May last year. The first appointment that we could get our hands on was all the way in February of 2026. So like 2 months ago. So we would still be waiting in Australia if that's the appointment that we ended up getting. I am a hustler, and so I was calling them every day. I was looking on the website every day. I managed to get us some appointments in October. They cost, I think, $300 to get put through. We had to pay for Airbnbs. We obviously had to pay for the Spirit to get there and the petrol and the driving to get from Hobart to Sydney, which was fine because we ended up converting it into a holiday anyway. However, it was pretty stressful. I'm not going to lie. If you're looking at getting an extended visa of any sort into the US, then, oh my gosh, I wish you luck because it was really, really hard.
It was a lot of work.
But I'm so glad that we did it. So now we've got extended 6-month visas so that we can travel in the US, which is also the same as what we get just as Australian visas in Canada. So we've now got the opportunity to have 6-month visas in Canada and 6-month visas in the US. So that means we're not as rushed as what perhaps we would have been if we had have just left without getting those visas.
That's one thing you really need to think about. Can you even travel here? There are a lot of rules on whether you can travel here as well. You got to remember, like Canada and the US, there's a lot of things that you need to be able to get past before they let you in the countries. So the next thing you need to think about is, can your car actually go to these countries? For example, with importing, any car can technically go to Canada and the US. I know there were so many people telling me that you cannot take new 70 Series Land Cruisers to Canada and the US. I don't know where people were getting their information from, but that is definitely not true. You can take pretty much any car you want to a country, Canada or the US, for a temporary import. Now, if you want to take a car that is newer than 15 years in Canada or newer than 25 years in the US, you need an EPA exemption. I'm not going to tell you exactly how to get all these kind of things because we didn't need to, because
Our car is 25 years old.
our car is 25 years old, and we did that on purpose because it makes it a lot easier. But you can technically take a newer car across. There's a few reasons why we went with a car that was 25 years old. One, it doesn't have to have an EPA exemption, so that makes it pretty smooth sailing when it comes into the border. Also, this car can be sold here, whereas if you bring a vehicle in that's newer, it technically has to leave the country within 12 months or you can get huge fines. And as you're about to find out, it costs us a lot to get our car here. It would mean that your fees are doubling because your car has to leave after 12 months. And it obviously, shortens your stay period in these countries to only 12 months. Whereas if we want to keep going, our car can be imported into one of the countries and registered in Canada or the USA and continually driven here for as long as we want. It can also be sold, so we don't have to pay for it to come back if we don't want to. Basically, it is a lot easier to bring a 25-year-old plus car over here. But yeah, whoever's been telling you that you can't bring your 2020 70 Series here, you definitely can. It's going to be harder, but you can definitely. There are people traveling in newer V8 70s here. And one thing as well I wanted to add on that is that a lot of people say you have to get carnet de passage, which is basically like a passport for your car. Now, you do not need that in North America. In certain other countries, you definitely do. If you are really serious about looking into shipping your car to other countries, then definitely look into whether your car needs a carnet de passage, but we did not need one for North America. All right, now, sorry if we're jumping around. Now, the brokers. So technically, you probably don't have to have a broker, but I have no idea how to contact shipping companies or contact customs and all those kind of things. So I would suggest going with a broker. We contacted about 5 different ones in Australia and only 2 replied. Now, I do understand, think about how many people, for example, are going to watch this video and then contact a broker and say, get a quote, for example, to get their car shipped overseas, and then never do it. I feel like a shipping broker would just be flooded with those kind of things of people just wanting to... Just
having an idea and being like, oh, I'm going to look into it, and then nothing ever eventuates.
Exactly right. And I think that's how our broker eventually sort of treated us. I didn't think that he thought we were serious.
Yeah. Initially, he was like blasé, really unhelpful.
Really unhelpful, yeah. And
Mind you, he was pretty unhelpful the whole time.
He was very... Sorry. And we're not going to say who they are or anything like that.
But we're also not going to recommend who they were because the exporter of this car was it made it extra challenging.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, but we couldn't find anyone else.
Yeah, we couldn't find anyone else. We had to go with who we found.
Yeah.
And it just meant that we had to be doing a lot of following up, asking a lot of questions that didn't get answered, working things out ourselves, which, to be honest, were pretty straightforward questions that just weren't getting answered.
No, exactly right.
But anyway, we got our quote and we went with it.
Yes.
Our quote was...
So the quote was about $7,000 to get the car shipped from Melbourne to Vancouver. So it's like $6,950, I think, in the container. We were pretty happy with that. Originally, we had got a quote for the Ro-Ro, like we said, to go from Melbourne to LA for $5,000. Then we thought, we can pay an extra $2,000 and have the thing... One, get to Vancouver where we know it's not going to be at a difficult port. And also 2, we can take everything we want inside.
We would be saving that money in the long run.
Yeah, definitely right. Definitely right. So that's the original quote we got from that. Now, when we contacted this guy, he said that he could deal with the exporting of the car, but he couldn't deal with the importing of the car into Canada.
So conversely, we then had to get an another broker who was in Canada who could then accept the car and help us with all of the customs on that end. And I must say, they were a particularly amazing company.
Yes.
They were called
All
Cargo
Cargo
Express,
Express.
and I could not recommend Marie more highly. She was absolutely fabulous, replied to our emails all the time, was so helpful with customs, told us exactly where our car was, what was happening, what we had, what paperwork we needed, all of this stuff.
Yeah,
so
it was just so
I
good.
could talk highly about one of our two,
one of our two brokers.
which is really amazing.
But so what I realised once we started talking to Marie, I realised that Marie could have done this whole thing. She could have brokered the whole deal and organised the shipping container in Melbourne and done all that for us. And I asked her to, but because we were referred by our original broker, she didn't want to stand on any toes or anything, which is fair enough because then you wouldn't get any more work out of it. So we basically paid for two brokers.
For no reason.
Yeah, for no reason, which is, again, something that we didn't know.
But it's also something that you just have to learn on the fly. You know, you're not going to get everything perfect the first time.
No.
So had our time again, we would have just gone with one company and it would have been amazing.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so now we've booked in our two brokers and we know what's happening. So our original broker was to deal with the exporting.
We dropped it off.
It
then sat
20th.
there on the
wharf
for about 10 days before it then got packed into the shipping container.
And the thing is, I would have liked to have seen it go into the shipping container and made sure that it was all okay, which is usually what people do. But because we were so early, the shipping container wasn't even in the yard. I'm pretty certain it sat inside because it was pretty clean when it came out of the container. So that was nice, but God knows where it was. It was just sitting in a warehouse, probably with the keys in it. Nothing happened to it, which was fantastic. But this was the whole reason that we paid for container shipping, so that I would see it get locked in the container and I would see it unlocked from the container. That was the plan.
Yeah.
Anyway, that didn't happen.
But it all ended up working out, which was really amazing. And actually, someone who watches our channel was the person who packed our car. And so we're really grateful for him because he did a really good job.
He did a fantastic job, yeah. It was still fine when it was in there.
Perfect, yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. So then the car left on the 13th of February and we were able to track the boat online every single day as it was making its way across the country, across the world.
And it was at this point as well, I'd just like to add with our other broker, we could see our brokers emailing each other, and our broker from Australia was asking our Canadian broker to do paperwork.
That should have been done prior to the car leaving.
And that he hadn't done, and she was basically telling him how to do it.
It was embarrassing.
Yeah, it was so annoying. Also, we never even saw him. He was in Sydney. Like, he just organised this all over the phone.
Anyway, let's stop talking bad about him.
Yeah.
Because that was just one element of the thing, and it wasn't the worst thing in the world. It made it there safely. It just cost us more money and it cost us more time. But at the end of the day, I'm grateful that the car's here in one piece and it worked out really well.
Yeah. So, the car takes a month to get across from Melbourne to Vancouver. It arrived in Vancouver
on the 13th of March, which was exactly the day that they said that it was going to arrive.
So everyone had said not to book flights because if your car gets held up by, for example, customs or delays, you could be paying for hotels for a month, really. We took a bit of a gamble and we booked for a week after, which now we know from our friends that went to LA, it was a gamble and it paid off for us, but it may not for you if you want to ship your car. It still is a good idea just to, as soon as you know the car is going to get there, then fly. Especially if you're going to be living out of your car. The extra $1,000 that you might pay in airfares by booking late would be saved by the hotels that you're having to pay for waiting a month for your car.
So we'd booked our flights, but then before we had left, we actually got a phone call in the middle of the night because it was Canadian time saying that our car was ready to collect
port.
That day. The 13th or the 14th, I think it might have been. But because we were not there, it ended up getting held up an extra day at the port, which then meant that it got picked up for a custom scan, which if we had have been there may have been avoided. However, we just don't know. That ended up costing us an additional $800 for the custom scan. And they pretty much opened the shipping container. They looked in, they said, that's exactly what's meant to be in there, and then they shut it and they didn't need to do any more further customs exams or looking through the car.
It can be very, very expensive if they properly pick it up. If your container wants to be properly searched by customs, you have to pay for it to be trucked, the container trucked to the customs warehouse. You have to pay for it to be unloaded. They'll search it, and then you have to pay for it to be reloaded and then retrucked back to another warehouse where you can pick it up. So that can cost you $5,000 to $6,000 just for them to search it. They also rip your car apart as well, which can be not ideal.
So we took a gamble. We booked our flights, which ended up being a couple of days after the car had arrived. We then got the call saying that the car was going to be put through customs, which just was what it was at that point. We thought it was a bit of a bummer, but at the end of the day, there was nothing we could do about it.
No.
We then landed on the Thursday, which was about a week after the car had been there, and we could pick it up on the Friday, which was amazing.
Yeah.
So we went into All Cargo Express. We met with Marie. She gave us some paperwork.
Yeah.
We then had to take it into the Canadian Customs office and have it pretty much just looked over and stamped to say that we were going to be temporarily importing the car. We then took it to the shipping warehouse where we were to pick the car up. They hadn't quite unloaded it, which was fine. We got to it with a flat, and it was the best day ever because it was in one piece.
Now, probably the bad part about us turning up late is the fact that we had to pay for our container to be moved. So they call it drayage, container drayage. So we had to pay $850 for our container to be moved to a separate customs warehouse and then stored there. So it wasn't stored on the port, and we had to pay storage fees as well for our container to be held until customs could see it. I don't know how much it would have cost without all this, but it cost us almost $3,000 for us entering into Canada because of us having to get the container moved. It cost $850 just to get our container moved to a different warehouse because we weren't there early enough to pick the car up.
However, it may have been put in for customs anyway. We don't know. But either way, it is what it is.
So we eventually got the car. We had paid all that money just to get the car there. But the funds don't stop there. All right, so now the car was landed in Canada, done. You know, we've paid for the shipping. We have the car. We're outside of the shipping place. Now the next part is, how do you drive your Australian registered car in Canada? You can just drive it there. Like, as long as it's registered in Australia, you can drive your car there. Obviously it has to be on a temporary import, so customs need to know that it's there, but you can drive your foreign registered vehicle in another country. We have, reciprocal rights, but insurance is the biggest thing. And this is something that we didn't know. I watched a lot of YouTube videos like this of, how to ship your car or whatever. People never talk about insurance and how expensive it is.
So expensive, in fact, that I would say probably 80% of what I understand of the people who have temporarily imported cars into other countries are driving around with only third party and no full comprehensive. So if someone was to crash into their car,
it's gone.
They could be wearing a $200,000 price tag of their car that's completely written off.
Exactly. So if you see someone driving around in a foreign plated car somewhere, stay away.
Just assume that they've got no third party. They've only got third party. They've got no full comprehensive insurance.
Yeah. And look, from an insurance company's standpoint, I do understand why you're insuring a foreign plated vehicle, also a foreign licensed driver.
There's a lot of different factors.
Yeah, a lot. So everywhere to drive, you have to have third party insurance. You don't need full comprehensive, but you have to have third party. So for us to get third party for 6 months, it was about $2,000 Australian. That was through a company called Intersecure. There is barely any companies that will insure you for a foreign plated vehicle with a foreign driver. Then on top, we have full comprehensive insurance to insure the Troopy itself, which was about 2,500?
No, that was the same, I think.
Yeah,
I think it was about 2,000.
Yeah, about 2,000 Australian for 6 months, and the car is insured for about $45,000 Australian. So this is something that you need to think about as well. If you're going to bring your $200,000 Troopy over here, you know, expect to be paying well over $10,000 a year in full comprehensive insurance.
Well, on top of that, so people might pay $10,000 per year in third party and comprehensive. On top of that, if they do have a crash, their excess is an additional $10,000 just before they get going.
Yeah.
So
our car is insured with a company in Europe that, like, there's not many people that will do worldwide. The company is called Fidasi. They specialize in like boats and things, because obviously boats do go worldwide.
We searched far and wide. We looked on Facebook groups. We spoke to people who have done this sort of thing, and that was the only option we could come up with.
Yes.
So it's not ideal. It is expensive. It was $4,000 for 6 months, but it just is what it is. That's the price you pay.
Yeah, exactly.
And I suppose if you think about it, we are saving money in other ways.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to pay for insurance at home. Now, one thing that people kept telling me is that your car doesn't have to be registered in Australia. And look, I understand that it doesn't have to be. How would the police ever know that the car was not registered in Tasmania? They never would. But the reason that we keep paying our registration in Tasmania, and if you guys have seen our defect video about how important it was to us to keep our registration, was for insurance. Like, can you imagine if you were in a really bad crash where, you know, someone passed away?
Not even that.
Not
if you
even
were just
that.
in a really bad crash.
Really bad is anything, and then insurance found out that your vehicle was actually unregistered in the country of origin, they would love to get out of that, wouldn't they? So, I mean, if you want to drive your car over here with no registration, that's fine. You know, it's obviously a risk. I highly doubt that you're going to get in trouble with law enforcement, but for insurance purposes,
it's not worth the risk in our opinion.
No, definitely not.
And then we've got a few cheeky tips that we would like to share with you, which might make the process a little bit more straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
The first one being how pedantic you have to be with making sure your vehicle is 100% dirt-free and clean to get it across the ocean.
Exactly. Our car was really clean.
It was very clean.
It was very, very
Jake
clean.
spent, I reckon, a week fully deep cleaning the car, every single day, in every single crevice, in every single part. I can't even tell you how clean this car was when it arrived.
Again, on like how expensive it is for the customs to move your car. If customs need to clean it, they have to do the exact same thing. You have to pay for your container to be moved somewhere, and then you have to pay to get it cleaned, and then pay to come back. So you might pay $6,000 to have your car cleaned. I'm sure that you could take a week off work and spend it cleaning your car. I mean, even if you have to pay $2,000 for someone to detail it, it's cheaper than that. So it's just not worth the risk. Just make sure your car is absolutely spotless. I know that going into Australia and New Zealand is insane with having your car clean. And I've heard of people having them fully steam cleaned and then Australia just charging them anyway. Again, it's a little bit more lax coming into this side, but don't hold me to that.
That's only from our experience, and our experience was that the car was clean and nobody said that it wasn't. So
yes,
we were really happy with that.
Yeah, so make sure your car's clean. The next one is, I know I talked a lot about lithium batteries in that other video I did about the car being defected. I didn't cover the fact that you could still ship with lithium batteries. Our broker made it seem like it was impossible to ship lithium batteries, and he just didn't want a bar of it. You can ship lithium batteries on a ship. Obviously they come all the time. They just need to be classed as dangerous goods. So you would have to have a dangerous goods sign, and you have to have like certain paperwork done to make sure that the batteries are safe and all that kind of stuff. Now, our broker, the original one that we didn't really, whatever, he made it sound like it was impossible. So we ended up taking our battery out.
Well, he said it was impossible. He said you can't take your battery with you.
Yeah.
And we just thought, okay, that's facts. We can't take our battery with us.
Yeah.
We then spoke to the other couple who had their car on exactly the same ship as ours, and they said, no, you can, we have.
Yeah, they have. And you just have to do more paperwork.
And so we were kind of bummed.
Yeah, I think our broker, one, probably didn't know how to do the paperwork, or two, just couldn't be bothered with it. Because it would have been a lot easier for us to, I could have brought my drill batteries, and so we had to get a whole new lithium battery. But doesn't matter, that's already done. We would learn next time that there is ways around it.
So I know we've talked about prices here and there throughout this video. However, to make it really easy and simple for you guys, we've broken it down completely straightforward. So the cost of our Aussie broker and the shipping from Australia was $6,950. We also had to pay an additional 900 Australian dollars for marine insurance. And then for our Canadian broker to receive the car, it cost an additional $2,850. So that totals at $10,700 from port to port.
Yeah, well, from us dropping it off to picking it up. So the reason it was expensive there was, like I said, we had container drayage from different warehouses to the ports and things like that. You know, that's how we got our car there. $10,700 Australian. But now here are the other costs.
So some of these costs are obviously only specifically relevant to us, but some of these costs also may be helpful for you guys to know as well.
Yes.
So the added fees that we had to pay were obviously the flights and the Spirit trip for dropping off the car to Melbourne. That was roughly $1,000.
Yeah.
We then had to pay the additional customs fee, which was when the car was getting imported into Canada. That was an $800 Canadian, which is very similar.
Yeah, pretty much one for one.
Pretty much dollar for dollar at the moment. Our flights from Australia to Canada, which we got super, super cheap, which was amazing. They were $2,200 for the both of us, which is just like completely unheard of. So we got so lucky. The visa costs for the US, which we had to get, obviously we drove to Sydney, but we won't include any of those extra travel costs. But just to get the visa itself, it was $750 for the both of us. So that was for both of us to get the visas. And then finally, we paid 12 months car insurance, both third party and comprehensive. And that cost us $8,000 Australian for the year. So I will add that up quickly. So the additional fees that we had to pay were $12,750. So in total, we paid a lot of money. In total to ship our car, including the insurance for the 12 months. So pretty much every single thing except for the accommodation that we've paid and the actual trip itself now.
Yes.
Was $23,450. So it wasn't cheap.
No.
However, if we had our time again, I honestly think we still would have done.
Yeah, of
we
course,
still would have
definitely.
sent our car.
Yeah, definitely. It's just that we didn't know how much it would cost. We started this with a $5,000 quote.
However, it now means that we can travel freely. We've been here a month. We've paid for probably a week and a half of Airbnbs, which is absolutely fine. Aside from that, we have paid for 3 nights accommodation. And that was 2 nights at an RV park and 1 night at a reserve. Every single other camp has been a free camp.
Yeah, the free camping here is so easy.
I hate to say it's better than Australia.
Oh, it's way better.
You can free camp in so many places here.
It's so good.
Comfortably.
It is so good.
Every single forestry road, every single piece of land that isn't owned by someone privately.
We don't know what the US is like though, but Canada.
No, but for BC specifically.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. But that's not what you're here for, are you? You're here to know about how we shipped our car, and now you know. Yeah, it was expensive. So if you're looking into doing it yourself...
At least you've got the heads up, because we never had a heads up.
No, we never had a heads up, yeah. There's a reason no one's doing it. That $20,000 that we spent, obviously there's other things involved, but you know, you could buy a car over here and sell it and drive around.
I wouldn't have it any other way.
No,
yeah.
You wouldn't have as much fun as us though. Oh guys, anyway, thanks so much for watching. I hope this helps. If you've got any questions, put them in the comments and I'll try my best to answer them for you.
We love you guys. We will see you so very soon.
Bye.